Hi, how are you? It is Butterfly. Nice to see you again. I'm so glad that you came by to visit me. So, what am I going to talk to you about today? This evening, I was gathering it's my prayer time, it's my quiet time. And I thought, I really have to bring some completion to the study of tarot. Not like it's ever going to be complete, but I did start going through various cards and their meanings on my channel. And then I started an exercise, which turned into a contest, the Make My Own Deck contest. So I've had 2 of them so far. And the winnings is a tarot reading from me. So, and it will be online. So I'd like to make the 3rd of these contests. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about tarot, we're going through the basic sort of traditional meanings of tarot. And of course, if you want to do more in-depth studies and you want to expand on those meanings, we can certainly do so. But not just during this contest. This is for, a basic beginner level so that everybody who is at all interested can grab a deck and learn, grab a book and learn. And if you don't want to buy a book or a deck, here's your chance to make your own deck. So the previous contests were the 4 aces, and then I think I went through the cups, the suit of cups in the Minor Arcana. So basically, the entries were to make your own deck. You can draw it, you can do any kind of, however you want to personalize your deck, you do it. This is for you to learn on your own, because I feel as an educator that when you put your own pen to paper, when you put your own effort to your own art, that is where the concepts really kind of get crystallized, and you sort of look for your images and you look for your meanings, and that's when the cards become meaningful to you. That's how any learning has ever happened with me. It doesn't matter how many times I take notes in class, it's when I rewrite them or when I draw little pictures and doodles at home afterwards. That's my study time. That's how I kind of commit those pieces of information to memory. So basically that's what I'm doing here. So what I'd like to do now is to go through the suit of swords. Or if you want to call your deck air or any kind of corresponding, something that's at correspondence, like the color yellow, or however it is you want to do it, feathers, the suit of feathers, I welcome you to do so. Tonight, I'm not going to go through all of the 10 minor arcana in the suit of swords. I'm going to go through the ace because that's what I was meditating on this evening, and that's the information that I was going through. My intention is to go through each of the cards separately. So the 2, the 3, the 4, all the way to the 10. And at the end of that, hopefully, I mean, that's quite the commitment, because even if I did like 1 a day, that would take me to about the middle of December, right? It would take me about 2 weeks. So I plan on making the draw in about 2 weeks. Whether I'm actually finished 1 per day or not, I'm going to have to judge as I go along. Tonight, though, I'm just going through the ace of swords, okay? And then I'll announce later on when I'm going to do the draw for anybody who's entered into the contest. So I need to have some entries before I can actually make a contest, right? So I'm making it very fluid. All right, without further ado, let's look at the ace of swords. What is the ace of swords? I have just a couple of decks here. Here's your traditional Rider-Waite depiction of the ace of swords. Here is a sword. It's a very kind of animated sort of a drawing. Of course, the Rider-Waite-Smith deck is not kind of like a real picture. Those birds just start talking. It was quiet before I started talking, and then all of a sudden, they decide to hone in on the chat. By the way, if you're interested, these are flowers that I received for my birthday. My birthday was last Sunday. So isn't that pretty? See, now they're committed to being forever memorialized. I don't know what these little berry bits are. Where are they? These little danglies. I have no idea. If you know, perhaps you can put it in the comments down below. Okay, so there's the Ace of Swords. So the sword is very much an image of strength. That is the tool that the aristocrats used to use, right? That is the tool that was forged. It symbolizes, or it's become kind of symbolic of having money, because it takes money to have a sword. If you have a baton, like a stick, a walking stick, that's something that you can find and it costs nothing at all. Even today, you can just find a stick, right? And it helps you to walk, it helps you to fight, it helps you to defend yourself, it can warm you if you want to burn it and make fire. So it's very multi sort of, you can use it for multiple tasks, for building homes or structures. But the sword has a purpose. It is first of all, it's a symbol of aristocracy, but it's also a symbol of defense and of authority. So that's where the background symbolism of the suit of swords comes from. Aristocracy, intellect, intelligence, education, knowledge, higher learning, higher kind of intellectual power. That's kind of what's behind here. So of course, given that it's the one or the ace, we look at that on a scale from 1 to 10. This is the beginning. So it's the beginning of a thought, the first inception of a concept. It can also be the beginning of a cycle. If you're looking at the numbers from 1 through 10 as a cycle, things tend to be very cyclical. Once you get to the end of a project, an intellectual endeavor, it's the beginning of another. It's time to start another thing. So this is the beginning of perhaps a period of growth developmentally, conceptually. Perhaps you learned something in a class at school that has challenged some of your previously held concepts about yourself, about society, about people in general, about anything at all. I'm going to have to put a blanket over that. And so it's the beginning of like an internal sort of a struggle, or an argument or a fight, because don't forget, this is also fighting and defense, that you're having with yourself. So it's the beginning of that sort of a cycle. What else can I say? Well, I would, as you're studying tarot, suggest that you, my birds, feathers, that is also very much in keeping with the east, the yellow, the feathers, the swords. These are all symbols of the same sort of part of the quadrant when we're looking at the 4 directions. So those are my feathered intellectual friends. Anyway, so I would really encourage you to get some kind of a binder or some kind of a scribbler or whatever works for you. If writing works for you, then do that. If some kind of a recipe card, filing system works for you, then do that. If you're a person of few words, maybe that'll suffice. But I know that for me, I have a few of these now. This is the one that I work with kind of the most because it's more succinct. But I do have some binders where I've written reams and reams and pages on each and every single card. Some of it is directly copying from books, because that's how I commit things to memory, and some of it is after having read it, what do I remember, sort of testing myself on it. So I would suggest that you do something like this. This is the page that I have dedicated to the Ace of Swords. On this side is a summary of what is in a very popular book. I recommended it. It's Joan Bunning. She's available online. If you look, she's generously published her book and made it available for people to read. But you can also buy her paper copy, which I have in my library as well. This side of the page here is basically a summary of everything that I have found. Well, everything. A lot of things that I wanted to commit to memory that weren't, glaringly obvious. That I didn't already kind of, So I've been picking these up over years, and every single page is like that. So this previous page would be the world. So I put the Major Arcana in front, And I started here with the Minor Arcana and then the core cards and so on in the back. So this book itself has 80 pages in it, and so it worked out really perfectly for the 78 cards. Each card has a 2-page spread. So what are the kind of things, and I'm just going to kind of go through this because the best way to do this succinctly is to read it out to you, even though that's really kind of the most boring part. But I'm going to show you at the end, I'll show you some different tarot cards that I have so that you can get some different images. In fact, why don't I do that while I read so that you have something other than me to look at while I'm reading. Okay, so here, this is from the Everyday Witch, and this is what she has to show us. So here you can see that she's very much in the swing of, just dealing with the wind and the birds. So feathers and wind is also symbolic of the sword, is also symbolic of the intellect. And so here, when we pick up when we lay the card, Ace of Swords, we're looking at success, decisions, beginnings, the power of intellect, learning of a new skill. So again, skills here, which is different from labor and toil and business, which is the Suit of Pentacles. This is skill because it takes training and knowledge to be able to do a skill. Detailed analysis, beginning of a cycle. The sword is used to clear a path for intellect. So here you are with your sword, clearing a path as you are cutting through whatever vines are in front of you so that you can walk your way and see your way. You're at the beginning of your cycle and you are walking your way through your path. So as I continue, I'm going to show you yet another picture. Here we go. This one's from the Green Witch Tarot Companion. I really love the Green Witch Tarot Companion, but it's probably one of my absolute favorite decks. Okay, so there's another depiction. A lot of these newer sort of decks still keep an animated sort of a flavor to the cards, but they also bring in little critters like these, the bugs and the mice and the, So here again, you're seeing those seeds from the weeds, from the dandelions, floating up into the air, if you see here. And so there's, again, some action, the inception of action, going in through the wind. You see the clouds moving. That is, again, wind. It's heavily, kind of suggestive of all the symbolism that I've been talking about. So this is the ability to speak your truth. Your voice, words, is also part of the lexicon with the Suit of Swords. So any kind of verbal information, books, would also be symbolic of this suit. Here you have the Great Power, the beginning of the Great Power. It's kind of symbolic of putting both of your hands on the sword and pulling it out. This is Excalibur. So it's the beginning of having the power to do something. You're at the beginning of your project. So the one, just the one alone, because this is an ace, the one is symbolic of, it's a number of, new start, new strength, independence, new growth, focus. It's something that is isolated. This is alone. The symbolism of new thought, something that is solitary or solo or alone, loneliness. Well, it's different from loneliness, though. It's being alone without loneliness. It's being alone in solitaire. So this is also seeding. And that's what I like about this particular card, is because you see the seeds there flying out. This is the genesis, the beginning, the first inception of a thought. This is the seed that is planting itself at the beginning of the growing cycle. So this is the seeding part. If you're doing a reading, this card in a spread would mean that this is the inception of seeding. How can I say? Fertile. The beginning of that fertile growth period. The beginning of new ideas, your plans, your new dissertation of will. Will is also something. I should learn those birds. So, your will, power, decision making. The beginning of new self-discovery that involves an inner power struggle. Shadow aspects that are fairly important here to look at. It would not necessarily mean that the card is reversed. Some people will read cards in reverse and say that that is the opposite of everything that you just said for the upright meaning. I don't do that. That's not in my practice. Also, the shadow aspect does not necessarily mean that if it's a reverse that you're reading the shadow aspect. I think at all times we have to be aware of our shadow self, our shadow aspect. There's things that happen within us that we may or may not want to kind of showcase to the world and be proud of, but we have to understand that it's part of who we are, and it's always part of how we get through those struggles so that we can become a better version of ourselves. So in those hidden meanings, the shadow aspect can include a rigid adherence to principles. So when your principle is such that this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm saying, but you're stifled in that what you know, and you will not change and evolve, right? This is the upward meaning would be this is the beginning of growth, and growth and development is change. But in the shadow aspect, you are not developing with that. You are staying at the initial steps, and you are not evolving and growing. So that is something that if you see this card in your meaning, you may want to give it some consideration to think, have I, accepted only what I know and not accepted things that are being brought to my attention that perhaps, if I think a little further, I will be able to see another side to this problem or to this concept or this thing that somebody else is talking to me about. Letting emotions or factors other than intellect control your decision. So that, as a shadow aspect, your intellect, this would be your intellect. So if you're looking at the opposite of intellect, we would think that perhaps it's emotion. I'm not entirely sold on that, but something alternate to intellect and that struggles with intellect would be emotion. Sometimes those two things don't necessarily go together. Sometimes you think something is right, but you feel something else is right, would be right, and you'd like to pursue that, but reasoning tells you otherwise. That's the sort of struggle that could be happening in your shadow aspect, in your shadow self. When you're pulling this card, you might want to consider, maybe I didn't, I'm failing to think things through. Maybe I would like to, let emotion guide me a little bit more now, rather than sticking to my rigid thought process, Just for kicks and giggles, look at somebody else's side of the story. Look at how it might feel to be somebody else. Or look at how it might feel if all I look at is how I think and I don't look at how I feel. That's the sort of openness of spirit that you want to kind of look at with the shadow aspect of this card. Another shadow aspect would be an inability to plan. An inability to plan, because the card itself talks about planning. And so are you done? Are you done? All right. Inability to plan. Shadow. Okay. Thank you, Anwar, for that lovely, lovely demonstration. Okay. I was actually going to read a little bit from the books. That's why I put the cards in there. But you know what? I think this video will be long enough without it. This is from the Witch's Tarot. So I'm taking my 3 witchy decks. They're my favorite, of course. Of course they are. So there we are. And here you see the sword again in a very typical way of depicting the sword, and the feathers, the bird that's flying up ahead, flying up to the apex of the mountain, to the summit of the mountain, and soaring on to better heights of intellectual, almost connecting with the gods. So I really like that. Here's a different one. Now I do have some decks that are kind of not very Rider-Waite-Smith, and this is one of them. And this is the Vision Quest Tarot. This one's more by, can you see their names on top there? This is more of a native inspired. So of course, do away with the swords and do away with the suit of swords. What they're talking about is we go back to the elements. So I like that because it's very pagan inspired, very native inspired, which is going back to the earth and using what we already have. So that's where they're using the feather. The feather. So here you see the vine kind of growing up and around the feather, and if I remember correctly, they're talking about how it's like the stream of thought that spirals up and around the feather. How did they say that? It was really kind of lovely. A carousel of thoughts that spins around endlessly in your head or without your consent now slows down enough to let higher inspirations come through to you. So that's the opening line. And I really quite like that. You can really meditate on the meaning of the Ace of Air. Okay, so those are the decks that I brought out for us for this evening, just to kind of give you a little bit of a overview of the Ace of Swords. I think I could probably go on for quite a long time, but I really do want to kind of keep this short. We're at, almost 22 minutes, and it's a long hard lesson for me to learn to cover up the page, and hopefully that'll make them a little bit more quiet. Otherwise, I'm going to have to find some different place for my videos other than my prayer room. But I will give you a little bit of a peek over here before I leave. This is how I have my altar set up right now, and you see how I didn't show you exactly how. I didn't use this setup for my talk because look at how dark I am. I'm like totally into my shadow here because the lighting is set up like that. So it's winter and or winter-ish outside. We're in the middle of November, at the end of November now. My goodness. So I don't always have candles lit, but I do have 4 candles here. 1, 2, 3 back here, and the left here is 4. And it's not set up for a working where I normally would, set this up with the male and the female aspects and stuff. I'm really kind of exploring with some different sort of setups. But I do have my incense. And I can't tell you what kind of incense this actually is because, and my lighter is. There you go. I can't tell you what incense that is because I really don't remember. It was from a bag in my stash, and that's what I know. But along my way, I do pick up feathers, but this is also something else that I picked up along the way, and I found it in one of my books as I was looking through my tarot books this evening. And that's a pansy. My favorite flower is a pansy from my garden. So that is my altar set up. And I'm going to get back into just maxing and relaxing and talking to my gods and to my energy and to my whatever that nameless being of energy is. And spending some time with my cards, spending some time with my books, which is what I really, really enjoy doing. And back to sipping my cup of tea. This is my very last bag of Mandarin whatever by Twinings, and I'll have to go out and get some more tomorrow. Mandarin Honeybush, I think it's called. It's an orange box, and oh, I just love that. It's just, I can't get enough of it. I buy them like 4 boxes at a time. Yes. So, long story short, if you want to take part in the contest, start making your tarot cards, your learning cards, 1 card per tarot card, like we've done for the previous contests. And if you are unfamiliar with them, I will leave you with some links below, but you can look them up. It's called Make My Own Deck 250, I believe was the first one, and Make My Own Deck 400 was the second one. This will be Make My Own Deck. I don't even know what I'm going to call it, but it'll be the third in the series, and I don't think I'm going to really make it contingent upon getting a certain number of subscribers, because you subscribe if you want to subscribe, and if you don't want to subscribe, you don't have to subscribe. I mean, I'll get to where I'm going to be, and I'm just going to focus on content rather than numbers, because I just feel better that way for now. Maybe I'll look at something else later. But anyways, so on one side, you put some kind of a depiction of the card itself, whatever that depiction is for you. And on the back, you might want to write out by hand or print out the meanings of the cards for you. Then as an entry for the contest, you make a video. It will be a video entry on YouTube. That's what I will accept. As a video entry, just say, make my own deck, and I will specify down in the box below, in the description box below, exactly what the name of this version will be, this third one. And yeah, it'll be for the suit of swords. Do aces through 10. Present how each picture is meaningful to you for each card, how it relates to whatever meaning you're doing. If, however, you want to do an oracle deck, you can do 10 cards of an oracle deck, showing the image on one side and explaining how each card, what each card would mean, what you would say if you were to draw it in a deck. That's okay too if you don't want to do tarot. And that'll also count as an entry. And I will do the draw for that third contest sometime in December, probably prior to Christmas. And the winning will be a online reading from me. It's just a short reading, probably 3 cards reading. And unless you want to have something that's a little bit more personal, then we can talk about that. But I would like to have an online one, so just so that people know that I've actually given the winnings to the recipient. So hopefully I'll get a couple of entries. That'll be really cool. That can happen. Can't have a contest without entries, right? So there's the Ace of Swords. I hope you found this somewhat interesting, not too long-winded. Thanks, and take care. Hope the birds haven't bothered you too much. I kind of like their sound, but it can be distracting. So let me know what you think about the Ace of Swords down below. All right, take care.